Hello, everyone, and welcome to Free Hands Friday, number 19. Today, we are continuing with our interviews of Canadian stick players, and today we have Jim MEYER. And Jim is not only a stick player, but he's an educator, and he's also been responsible for educating a lot of people through the seminars that he conducts in Canada. And once again, we have Dale Ladiseur, and she will be interviewing Jim. So take it away, Dale.
Welcome to Free Hands Friday, everybody, and welcome Jim MEYER from Vancouver, British Columbia. Jim would like to open the show with a little waltz that he wrote. Go ahead, Jim. Woo!
Hi, everybody.
That's beautiful. Hi, Jim. Welcome to Free Hands Friday.
So I would like to make a correction that I've noticed in past Free Hands Friday. Everybody calls him D-Bro. It's gotta be D-Bra.
Thank you, Jim, my longtime friend.
better than D-Man-Zier.
And I'm so happy to be interviewed by Barbara Walters of Free Hands Friday.
Oh no. Okay, well, my attempt to make you cry then will be at the forefront of this interview. It's a joy to have you, Jim. It's such a great thing to see and hear you play. That little waltz that you opened with, is that from something new or a previous recording that you have?
It is on the upcoming CD that's called Widow Waltz, which some of my friends say is such a depressing name, but I never really thought of it that way. But that's Widow Waltz, yeah. Its origins are from a stick seminar a long time ago, more than 10 years ago. But it finally became a piece sort of last year. So.
Now this is really exciting for me to interview you, not only because we've known each other for quite a while as stick brothers, but it's because you approach the stick. Yeah, because you approach the stick in an unusual way. In the 70s, you were a bass player in a rock cover band. In the 80s, you were a bass player in a top 40 cover band, like an 8-piece with 3 guys that were jazz. And then in the late 80s, you were writing MIDI soundtracks. Pardon me?
All the horn players were all in jazz bands. in various places.
Right, right, and that kind of started broadening your palette, and then in the late '80s, you said you saw King Crimson.
In the early '80s, I thought it
But
was the Beat Tour, but I'm thinking it was Three of a Perfect Pair. Yeah.
okay, so is that the first time that you saw a stick?
That's the first time I saw someone play a stick, but at university I had a roommate that was a big jazz fan, and he had the first Kitty Hawk album. And I remember, if I remember right, the back cover was a photo of the band. So that was the first time I actually saw a stick was on the album cover. Album, for those of you who don't know, is something you put on vinyl and put on a record player. So that was the first time I saw him, and I guess it was maybe 2 or 3 years after that that I saw Tony play with King Crimson. And then really, for me, what was even better than that as far as becoming a stick player was here in Vancouver, I used to work in a few studios. This is the very late 80s, I guess. And I ended up recording a local band with a stick player named David Horsley, who lives over on Vancouver Island now, and he's been to a couple of the seminars here as well. But not only did I get to watch somebody play in the studio, not just one time on a song, but play the same song over and over, but I got to sit and talk with him during breaks. And he had been to one stick seminar, and I think the people from way back may know, I don't know if it was Los Angeles or maybe Las Vegas, but he had been somewhere that Emmett was, and he was giving me the ropes on playing the stick, and I would go to the rehearsals. I videotaped him one time, and that was, I think really that was when I decided I have to have one of those, because I could really chat with David about what's it like to be a stick player. And the band, Excited First Daughter was the band, they had a drummer with a great big drum kit and a guitar player and David on stick. So David had to cover all the bass parts and then improvise or do harmony melodies with the guitar player with the other hand. So he was a pretty busy player, and it was just great to get his perspective on it.
Well, your journey is somewhat unique because you learned the stick through seminars. Do you want to walk us through that?
And then I guess we met at the first Vancouver stick seminar, which had nothing to do with me. That was Nathan Aswell did a couple of stick seminars in the mid-'90s, and that was where I met you and Greg Howard, and Don Schiff was at the '97 one. And for me, I think like a lot of stick players, I was struggling a bit with the book. I would say I also had what I would consider a mistaken impression that, okay, I'm a bass player, so my left hand will do the bass. And as bass players know, the inverted fifths tuning is not the biggest hurdle to get over. Your left hand kind of finds its way fairly quickly, I thought. And then in my head, it's like, I'm going to make my right hand be a guitar player, and then off we go. And even to this day, if you put a guitar on me, I sound like a bass player playing a guitar. So for me, that was not the right approach, but I did that for years. And one day, I just realized how much like a piano this is. And it's funny, if you flip the right switch in your brain, I was a better stick player that day because the whole way I was approaching the instrument sort of got straightened out a lot. But I would say, yes, I learned to play the stick by going to seminars. Because, for me, looking at something in a book is not the same as, well, maybe you remember too, Dale, I got to watch you play, I got to watch Greg Howard play, which was a little bit inspirational in 1996, I would say. And then all the guys at the seminar, too, guys that were raw beginners like I was, and guys that were a few steps ahead of us, and people that were actually pretty good players. And it was great to see in one weekend the path to becoming a stick player. And then, spend the next 15 years trying to get there myself. But, yeah, I think I would say to anybody, go to a seminar, because even if you can't go often and even if you have to travel a bit, there is so much that you could never explain in an interview that you would pick up from hanging out with stick players for a weekend that I would highly recommend it. Gene, yeah, everyone should go to LA in August, because then you get to see everybody. So, yeah, definitely a big fan of the seminars.
Yeah.
That's also one of the reasons why I really love this this new forum, this Free Hands Friday forum, because it's almost like a mini workshop that you get to attend, and all these are posted on YouTube after. So you even bothered to save your coin and go to European stick seminars. Were they quite a bit different?
They were a little bit different, and I thought it was pretty fun to sort of hang out with Justice League Europe for a while. But the first seminar I went to was Karsten's German seminar, and I'm pretty sure that was 2002. And it was really funny because I had a conference that was work-related at the time that was going to be in Europe, but not too far away. And Karen and I were thinking, well, maybe we should make a vacation out of it. And then I saw this ad about the stick seminar. I'm like, this is perfect timing. And then the conference got rescheduled for Vancouver at a later date, and Karen's schedule just got a little bit too busy. And I already had a plane ticket, so I literally went to Germany for a weekend stick seminar. And that was, I know that's a little bit over the top, but I'm really glad I went. And meeting Karsten was awesome. We had a day before the seminar where he had a lot of errands to run, and I just tagged along with him and spent a little bit of time in his band's rehearsal space, which was a bomb shelter from World War II. It was one of the coolest structures I've ever been in, and the sound was pretty amazing down there too, so that was fun. But as far as the seminars go, I had been to a few by then, and my CD has a few cover tunes I have to mention, all by stick players, so I'm playing one of Tom's tunes and a Glenn Porman tune that I just really love, and a Ron Bockerman tune. Ron was one of the instructors at that German stick seminar, and I vividly remember the group that I was in, we were all in the room and kind of tuning up. And then this guy walks in and sets up a microphone stand and a music stand and puts a book on it, and was handing out these sort of Sherlock stick practice things. And then he disappeared, and then Ron walked in, and he walked up to the microphone and said, "Page 42." And everybody turns to page 42, and we spent a lot of time doing exercises that I remember one of them was like a power chord thing, you know, every kind of root 5 octave you could do. And as a bass player, that alone was worth the price of admission, because it sort of made me realize where all those root 5s and even an octave up and an octave down. But that was highly organized and perfect. And I think that's where I met Jim Lampe and Verna, for everybody that remembers Verna, and Andre Pellot. And then I had the opportunity to go to one of Olivier's seminars in the west of Switzerland, and it was basically the same group of instructors, and some of the guys were the same. That was a couple of years later, I guess. And so it was great to see the different perspectives of all the instructors. I mean, the North American instructors are great, but if you can add, 4 or 5 on top of that, then it's just crazy. So yeah, that was very fortunate to be able to do that.
Would you walk us through the first time that you ever performed on the stick?
Yes, and in fact, I'll give you a couple of stories. The first time I ever played the stick in front of people, except for like my buddy's backyard barbecue kind of thing, was at Jim Riley's Kamloops stick seminar. That was 2001, in August of 2001, and really my serious journey started on my birthday in 2000. I had a used ironwood that I bought from a fellow up in Mission named Gar Riggins, and I was kind of grunting away with it a bit, but I decided, okay, I should play this thing. I should play an hour a day, or I should get rid of it. So a year later on my birthday, I really had played an hour, I won't say every day, but it really was a habit. So I ordered a new stick, and it arrived literally hours before I left to drive up to Kamloops for the seminar. And I think the most disappointing thing about that, because I know Emmett and Yuta were really kind of pushing things, they know I was going to go, and they really made an effort to get it across the border in time for me to go. And I got there, and I wanted to show everybody my brand new stick. It was the second newest stick at the seminar. I'm like, no way! But somebody actually got one that day. So, but that was Jim had set up that we all play in C, the Terry Riley sort of minimalist piece. That, for those that don't know, it's a series of motifs, some of which are really simple, and a few are pretty complicated, and then everything in between. And everyone starts playing the same motif together. And then whenever you feel like it, you go on to the second one, and when you're tired of that, you go on to the third one. The only rule was no going backwards. And eventually, everybody gets to the last one, and we're all playing the same thing. And during the, I think, 52 minutes it took to do that at the art gallery in Kamloops, Greg Howard was there. He was sort of conducting, crescendos and whatnot. And at times he would throw the effects on and solo on top of it. And I think it was 13 of us that were at the seminar sat in sort of a horseshoe shape in the art gallery. And I just remember feeling so buzzed just to be a part of it. And that was such a perfect environment because if you got to a little motif that you weren't confident with, you could skip it. And if you got to the point where you were kind of messing up, you could just stop playing. Or for me, I cheated. I brought a volume pedal along. And I remember, like, I'm lost. And I just kind of pulled back the volume until I figured out where I was. It was the safest environment to have the introduction to performing on a stick that I can imagine. And I would say to anybody that's nervous, I was so intimidated to play in front of stick players, and I pretty quickly learned a room full of stick players is the best audience you could ever want. Everyone is so supportive, everyone can identify with what you're doing, and they've either done it or they're about to do it, so it's part of their experience too. So yeah, that was great. That was really cool. And then the first solo performance was at a Michigan seminar that Glenn Poorman had put on. And I remember that so well. I was so nervous. It was more or less an open mic, and I think everybody had 2 songs. And I was performing, you know, they just sort of randomly put the list together. I was performing after Chris Crane, who, if I remember right, was releasing his 4th CD around that time. And I'm like, why are you putting me after him? But I stood in the back of the room with my headphones on and played these 2 songs over and over until it was my time to play. And I had the stick on. I don't recommend going upstairs with the stick on anymore, but I didn't know that then. And I had to step up onto this thing, this wooden thing, to get onto the stage. And as I was lifting myself up, I realized this thing I was stepping on was on wheels. And it started to roll. And if Greg Howard had not been right behind me, I would be dead now, I'm sure. So when I got on stage, I needed more adrenaline. But I was so wound up. And you know, all these experiences, I'm kind of writing a little thing called Becoming a Stickist, and this one's definitely in there. The room was a long, skinny venue, and the stage was on one side with a wall pretty much right in front of you, and the first note that I played bounced off that wall and came back and hit me, and it's like, oh, I was so nervous, my hands were trembling, and I managed to get through. I know there might have been a train wreck or 2 in there. And stick players and people from the audience afterward came up, oh, I really liked what you did. Oh, that was great, you know. And I thought, wow, if that was great, I should definitely hang with this crowd because one of these days I'm going to play it without messing up. And that was just awesome because I knew I could do it. I'm not making any claim about I can do it great, but I knew I could do it and get through it. And then it was really fun. Then it was a lot of stick seminars. We'd have a similar kind of thing, open mic, play 1 tune, play 2 tunes, and that was really how I got into at least some sense of a comfort zone, playing, you know, sort of 4 or 5 tunes that I had written that were pretty simple-ish, but, you know, work on those in front of people. And then I have to say the German stick seminar, that was another great group of guys, a lot of Italians and Germans and, like, the whole gang. And that was an open mic. I think people will appreciate this, too. At the very end of the last day of the seminar, people were like, oh, can I try your stick? You know, like, and one guy approached me, he had never played a 12-string. And I said, yeah, sure, so I took it off, but into getting him into my stick, we really had to loosen the strap a couple of notches. And he played for a bit, and then, oh, we better get to the club. So I put the stick away and went, and it was an open mic, and we were sitting at the table, and I finally got enough nerve to go up. And I was playing this tune, and every time my left hand moved from the verse to the chorus, I landed on the wrong string. And I'm like, yeah, this is the one that I can actually play, like, what's going on? And I realized after that the strap had been adjusted, and now the stick was like this instead of like this, and for me as a beginner, that was all it took to mess me up. And it's like, damn, I'm going to get this right one of these times. But I will say, I got back to the table, and all the stick players were applauding, and Jim Lampy was so nice. I mean, everybody said positive stuff. But then it was, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes later, and I was sitting next to Jim, and I said, okay, like, give me the scoop, because I'm actually sitting here. And he said, I think there was really only one deer in the headlights moment, and other than that, it was all right. I thought, okay, that's pretty good then. And then I just got, you know, this much more comfortable each time. And I was trying to count up how many seminars I've been to, and it's more than 20. I think it's close to 25. Of course, 13 of them have been here in Vancouver, but that's about half of them. And that's just for me, that was the perfect way to learn the instrument.
Wow, you got the steak knives. Now you're going for the gold watch, eh?
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Though I still think that Scott Schur is ahead of me. I'm winning in miles traveled, but I think he's actually been to more seminars than me. So I'll take the silver medal on that one.
Yeah. In early 2000, on your birthday, you decided to set a goal of playing every day.
Yes.
What did that? What kind of shape did that take?
You know, it's weird. I think it was more looking backward than forward because I think like a lot of people, I saw Tony play and then like I saw this local guy David play and I got my hands on a stick and I just didn't do much with it. I would say that I had a stick for 10 years before that. I think it was either 89, I think, when I got my used ironwood. And I realized that, when I dig it out, I do the same like 4 things, very base-oriented. And it just seemed like, do something with this or get rid of it. So it really was more feeling like I'm not making any progress. And I have to say now, it's just time. I mean, I can think of a half a dozen stick players off the top of my head that I will never be able to play like. I'm never going to sound like them. But in the course of that journey, I realized, well, they don't sound like each other either. So trying to sound just like your favorite stick player isn't really a great goal because you can only play what's in you. But it just got me going, and the more I played this thing, and I know a lot of stick players will feel the same way, it just gets more fun. And when you get to the point where you can do something simple, like you want to push yourself, okay, I can play both hands doing something simple. Can I do something a little bit more complex in one hand or change the rhythm or something? And that's an endless path, and it is so fun. I have had so much fun playing this, and even now, as you put more time in, you're just able to do more things. And when I started busking, and that's really how I learned to perform, was busking, I realized that I can't talk and play at the same time. And there's a lot of nice people that want to give you money or buy your CD or whatever, and they want to ask you a question. And I'd be playing something, and I'd realize that I'm like, can't talk now. I'd like grunt something out. But over time, there's a few things that I can play even in like 7, 8 time, and I can actually talk. And one day I realized a woman came up and asked me something, and while I was playing, I answered her, and I went, wow, I didn't used to be able to do that. So the other message I have for anybody learning the stick, it's time. The more time you put in, even when you feel like this is no better than yesterday or last week or last month, trust me, it is. And one day something's going to happen, and you're going to appreciate that time. But the more time you put in, the more things you can do, and like I said, the more fun it is. It is so fun to play this thing. I tell people all the time when I'm busking, I wish I would have invented it. If I would have beat Emmett to the punch, not that I was anywhere near it, but Emmett has to feel so good about not only inventing something, but this thing is amazing. You listen to pick your 6 favorite stick players. Chances are they have nothing to do with each other. They're playing such different styles on the same instrument in so many different ways. I just think it's the coolest thing. That didn't answer your question.
I think yes. Oh, yes. I think that David Broski may have identified that syndrome when you are trying to play a complex thing and answer people's queries. That would be Shatner syndrome.
Yes, that's very good, yeah. And the other thing about playing and talking is I learned pretty quickly that when you're busking, a lot of times you've got an hour to do your thing. And some people want to get maybe asking more questions than you have time for. So I realized that one of the tunes off my first CD that actually had also a waltz that I wrote for my mom, I realized I can play the intro in the left hand and still carry a conversation to an extent. This isn't a very good example of that. So that would be sort of my playing them off kind of thing, because they realize I'm still talking to them, but I'm also playing. And, I never used to be able to do that, and now I'm pretty comfortable with that. And, thanks a lot for coming by. I appreciate it.
Now give me your money.
And I'll talk to you. And right after this tune, you know, that kind of thing. So yeah, between learning to play, going to seminars, and truly learning to perform by busking, boy, those two things have been the cornerstone of my stick playing for sure.
Now, you just finished the 13th annual Vancouver Stick Seminar. You want to walk us through the story of in 2001 when you were in Kamloops and Jim Riley and Greg Howard were talking to you, and how you started throwing this?
I guess, you know, Nathan Aswell did such a great job with the 96 and 97 seminars. And then for those that know Louis Hessel Van Dinter, I think it was 98, had Steve Adelson come out to Seattle. And I went down to that one, and I guess, you know, I remember a couple of things from each one of these. I remember right before a break, Steve said everyone should buy a 12-string stick. And at the time, I was playing my 10-string Ironwood, and I said, yeah, 10's enough. I'm having trouble. And he said, no, here, play mine. And that's another thing about stick players. He literally took it off and said, here, play my stick. And I understood immediately how if you're uncomfortable moving, especially your right hand around, with a 12-string, you can reach like 2.5 octaves without moving. So if you want to sort of position play while you're getting comfortable, the 12-string's awesome for that. So that kind of got me thinking, when I do get a new stick, it's going to be a 12-string, and that's the one that arrived. That's this one here, my trusty Tarara 12-string with, oh, and I will digress now. Notice my pickup has no knobs, and if you look a little closer, it's a hybrid pickup with the stick up on the bass side and the active EMG on the melody side. And I just always love the sound of the stick up on the bass side, and in particular, as a bass player, the 3 lowest bass strings, I just think sound awesome on that pickup. So I know Tom will call that sort of the Tom pickup, though his is in the smaller housing. And some people will call this the Greg pickup, which is the block housing with the hybrid in it. But that's the Jim pickup. And the reason for that is I paid for it. So that's clearly the Jim pickup. But anyhow, so I just got that stick, actually with the regular Active 2 on it, and went to Kamloops and was talking to Greg and Jim Riley quite a bit about the whole seminar thing. And I think it was Jim Riley that said, well, when you get home, you should just do one. So we talked a fair bit at the seminar, and then we kept in touch, and I was teaching at Emily Carr, which is a art institute here, and managed to get the video production room to do the seminar in, and it just all, you know, I thought it was this huge nightmare to get something organized, which it kind of is, but it wasn't as bad as I thought. And I think we had a dozen or maybe 13 or so stick players sign up to come, and that just got it started. So in the early years, Greg and Jim were the instructors. Yeah, and here's the Matt Tate story. I had a list of everyone that had emailed me or had paid or whatever that they were coming, and there was one fellow here in town named Bruno, who I cross paths with every now and then, who wasn't there yet. So Greg and I were walking out the front building, and we see this guy coming up with a stick case, and I said, oh, you must be Bruno. And he says, no, I'm Matt. And I'm like, Matt who? Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't get time to register. I hope it's cool if I show up. And Matt had just jumped on a plane from Chicago and flew up thinking, well, stick seminar, I guess I'll go to that. So that was when I met Matt, too. And that's, I mean, that's a very good stick story, too. That's the way people meet. And so that seminar was awesome. Greg did a killer performance in the theater at Emily Carr that just turned everybody's heads around, and that was it. It went well enough that that was 2002, and I've done one every year since then. So, and I've had, you know, Bob Culbertson's been up here. I've been able to bring Jim Lampe over a couple of times across the water, and Greg is to at least half of them. I think of the 13, I was sort of thinking that Greg's been to 7 of them, and you know, Steve Adelson's been out, Tom's been up a number of times, Don Schiff is one of the most entertaining guys to spend a weekend ever with. So it's been, you know, not only has it been a significant part of my strictly musical journey, but getting to know these stick players is, I mean, it's friendships for life, and I've had lessons from both Don Schiff and Bob Culbertson in the car on the way to the airport. Oh, we didn't have time to do anything, and they, you know, they see me play all weekend, and they just tell me, like, here's, you know, 4 or 5 things you should work on. And that's just, it's a great group of people. It's been a great experience, and I'm sort of working on the 14th seminar already in my head.
So,
oh my, am I going all Ray Charles on you there, Dave?
No hands on the wheel, Jim.
so before we open up the mics to questions, I just wanted you to touch on your previous recording, Arbutus and Jade. Was that 2008?
That took forever, but I think you're right. I think we had Mike McKelko, for any stick player that's been to Vancouver in the last 6 years, has either known or played with Mike. I wonder if Mike's played with more stick players than anybody. But we had drummers come and play stick night at the former Jazz Cellar, God rest its soul, which closed down in February this year. And you know, we did some solo stick nights, but I stumbled across a couple of percussionists that did a great job. And this one year, neither one of them was available, and one of them gave me this guy's name, and he wasn't available either. And he said, "Well, why don't you call Mike McKelko?" And I'm like, "Oh, this guy's like 5th on the list. I don't know." And oh, side note, I'm like one of the biggest Rush fans on the planet. So I call Mike, and we hook up. Yeah, let's do a little rehearsal. I think I sent him some tracks. And I went down to his place, and he has a 2-car garage that's been converted into a teaching studio. He has a lot of drum students. So, you know, his drum kit and a teacher drum or a student drum kit, and photographs of Mike and every drummer you can think of. And the first one I saw was like a picture of Rush. I'm like, methinks I'm in the right place. And Mike and I just clicked. So that was in preparation of a stick seminar in May. And then right after that, I was ready to record the album. So I think it was September. We had 2 days in a studio to record everything. And Mike had written drum parts for every one of the songs. And there's that one on that CD. There's a few time changes, and there's the occasional, okay, we're in 5s, but like the 7th measure is 6, and then back to 5, and then 7s, and you know, not a ton of that, but enough of that. And Mike nailed everything. I could not believe that in 2 days we recorded drums on everything, and then hand percussion on I think 3 or 4 tracks. And that was just amazing to put that together. And then my buddy Boris, I'll have to do a Boris thing. The red gadget in the back there with the blue lights on it, Boris Dragic is somebody I met teaching. We were both teaching in one of these one-year learn to be an audio engineer kind of program. Boris art class, the how to solder stuff together, the studio maintenance class. But we just kind of hit it off, and Boris ended up mixing that first album. And now Boris and his partner are building preamps and DI boxes that are everywhere now. So this is a prototype of what they call the Creamer, which is a 2-channel tube preamp that has its innovative thing is you can set the tubes to a triode or a pentode mode. And the pentode mode is pretty screamy, and the triode mode is just really warm, and yeah, so it's a great preamp. So there, Boris, there's your commercial. But Boris mixed it, and I learned so much about mixing by sitting next to him. And now when we did, I think we added a little bit of keyboards from Zoran, the guy that mastered it, added keyboards to a couple of tunes, and I think that it turned out pretty nice. I'm still pretty happy with the sound of that disc. But this time around, the next CD that's hopefully August, I think it'll be available, is just solo stick. And that's sort of on purpose because I've been busking for 5 years now. And there's so many people that see me play solo. And even almost all the other gigs I've had besides busking are solo. Mike's a busy guy, but every now and then we'll do some shows together. But I do a lot of private things that are solo. So I thought it would make sense to have a CD that sounds like me standing there playing. So that Widow Waltz is on there, and the 3 stick player cover tunes are on there, and it still has a variety of tempos and even feels. There's a few up tempo tunes, but it's just stick. And because everyone talks about gear anyhow, I'll throw this out there too. The first CD was recorded with multi effects pedals everywhere, and boy, that made Boris's mixing job a nightmare because I think, if I remember right, there was one patch that I used on 3 tunes, and then all the other tunes had something different. So they were all different, the levels were weird, it was kind of a nightmare. And over the last 5 years, I don't even own a multi-effects unit right now, except for the VG99 for the GK3 pickup. But I've really gone to pedals that do one thing, you know, a 7-band EQ or a simple delay or a reverb. Well, Matt's there. I got at the Three of a Perfect Pair camp, the first one. The head of Pictronics was there, sort of selling some stuff at pretty good prices, and I got the Echolution, which is really a delay pedal, but it lets you add multiple delays, and with the feedback, I actually use it as a reverb. But that's the most complicated pedal I use, and I still only use it for one thing. And I think it's really trained my ear better than ever before, that I know what I want to sound like now. And I think on the first CD, it was more like, oh, that sounds cool. And for any guitar multi-effects pedal, you tend to have to EQ things a little bit. But I didn't really do much more than EQ it for the stick. And I think the sound is a little bit all over the place. And now I'm much, at least on this CD, it's really clear to me the sound that I'm kind of shooting for, and it's simple. It's delay and reverb, and one compressor is really, I think, all we're going to end up using by the time we're done. Boris is mixing again, so that's the we.
So before we go to Matt for the first question, can you play us something off of the upcoming album, Watercolors?
Yeah, I'll play a little, because the waltz was pretty mellow. I'll play one of the more up-tempo tunes, and to me, this one's just fun to play because it's kind of a sticky thing, and I am a bass player, so. Etc. So that's called Neuron. That'll be on the new CD too. But even though it has a different feel, I'm still using the same basic effects. So.
Okay, let's hand it over to Matt Tate.
Oh,
Unmute the microphone.
I had a spoon with me.
There we go.
You're killing me, Smalls. Or not so small, should I say. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
I guess I don't have a question yet, although I'm sure I probably will later, so much as a comment. But let me get situated. Make sure.
Yeah, you have quite a halo there.
Yeah.
You got that from Flint Blade, didn't you?
No. But,
I mean, we had that backdrop that looks so...
Okay.
The
Anyways, I digress.
The Matthew of Liberty.
Yeah, that's right. The Matthew of Liberty. Matthew of Trinity. Anyways, I guess the big thing I wanted to say was that my decision to become a stick player was made at Jim's Vancouver seminar in 2002. I was blown away when I saw King Crimson on Conan O'Brien. That was about 95. They played Dinosaur. Trey Gunn was on stick. Tony was on upright bass. Like, all right, that's it. I'm getting that. I don't know when. I don't know how. I don't know where, but I'm getting one. And I think it was 99, 2000 when I got it, and I was just fumbling around on it. Slowly getting better on that, slowly getting worse on guitar. And then, yeah, it was... the internet was still in its nascent stages, or the stick website was, and I'd found out there was the seminar coming up. I'm like, all right. I was kind of investigating it. There weren't really any performance videos up yet. I don't even think there was YouTube or anything like that. But thought about it for a week, decided, figured out if I could save up the money for it. Did so, got a plane ticket. Mailed out my, I think I got the plane ticket that week. Found a really good price. Mailed out my tuition fee for the seminar. I arrived before it did. and I didn't have an email address. I don't know if that was even a thing at the time. But I just showed up, and Jim Meyer and Jim Riley, I met them in the atrium, where there were sticks in glass cases on display, and I had my stick case with me, which is unmistakable. Unmistakable? I don't know. Yeah, and the Jims come up to me and like, oh yeah, like you said, Jim, you must be Bruno. Like, no, I'm Matt. And you and Jim looked at each other. Jim had to look up to you, of course. And then you looked at me like it was like a comedy punchline or something. Like, wait, so you're not so and so? No, I'm Matt. I'm from Chicago. And you guys look back up at each other again for this this pause, and then look back at me. Yeah, I guess I sent my tuition. It should arrive soon. It was supposed to arrive today, I guess. Maybe not. Hopefully this weekend. I'm good for it. Yeah, you guys let me in, and seeing Greg Howard saying, you keep really good time with the right hand as a guitar player of 15 years at that point or whatever it was, but you keep time with your left hand. So tap your left foot, not your right foot. And just something as simple as that made all the difference in the world. And that weekend, I'm like, all right, see you, guitar. I was working on Buckethead type stuff, little Mahavishnu stuff. Holdsworth was, a huge thing for me at that point too. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm never going to be Segovia or Holdsworth, so let me go ride this thing out for a little bit. But yeah, that seminar changed my life. And I actually quit guitar for 7 years. I didn't even pick it up until I got a job teaching guitar, of all things. So that was it. That was pretty much all I wanted to say. Yeah. Yeah, but I've been back to quite a few seminars since. Not nearly enough, because I absolutely love the Vancouver seminars. And Jim Meyer is officially and forever one of my favorite people in the world. I'm a huge fan. And
now I remember that another stick connection. I'm pretty sure it was the first year we were here that we had quite a Gordian knot moment. I think you had a really early flight. So instead of sleeping, I think we just stayed up all night listening to stick music on CD. And I think Gordian knot was spinning pretty hard that night.
Yeah, I think so. I think we were drinking quite a bit that night.
I don't think that's true. Well, thanks, Matt. That's
anyways.
Yeah, that's
all sorts of, and I've enjoyed all the millions of stories that aren't appropriate for YouTube.
Yeah. But it sounds like maybe the early part of your journey was similar. You had a stick for a couple of years, but really didn't make a lot of progress till you went to a seminar thing.
Yeah, I made a fair enough amount of progress. The books helped a little bit, and kind of my philosophy is one of the best ways to learn an instrument is to just write on it. So that's what I did pretty much from the first moment I picked it up. I was just start imitating Tony Levin lines or my brother's drum parts. 2 of them are drummers, so I just imitate, and that was it. And just writing on an instrument is it.
That was exactly something I wanted to touch on too, is that because I did the same thing. And even as a bass player, I did start out playing in cover bands, but I ended up in bands that were writing music. And even in cover bands, I'm not that good at listening to somebody's bass line and picking it out note for note, so I would a lot of times just kind of write my own bass line. And on the stick, I felt the same way. Like, when you're a beginner, you're not just going to start ripping off, tunes of the pros. So I started with, a lot of times, maybe an exercise out of Greg's book or something, and then elaborate on it a bit, and then it's sort of, actually one of the tunes on the first CD, the first track is that was an exercise, that was something we learned at the seminar, and then I thought, well, how about forwards and backwards? So, and then whenever I got more comfortable with it, I'd just add a little thing like, and it just became a song. So I felt the same way that writing was a great path into learning the instrument, because then it really is your own approach to it instead of trying to mimic somebody else. And I know there's people that are great at that, so I'm not, I'm just saying find your own way. But for me, writing a tune, and then I remember when I discovered the minor pentatonic in the right hand, it's like, whoa, that opened a door. And just, and I like teaching, and I have more and more private students now. And man, you always learn from teaching people. And everybody's got their own approach, but that's something I tell them is like, find what you think fits with this instead of forcing what you've heard someone else do with it. And Dale and I have been talking a little bit recently. I've never been like the crazy fanatic Frank Zappa fan, but I've always had a little bit of what's going on. But in the last little while, I've run into some friends that like Dale, but a couple of friends of mine from way back that were big fans, and I've been watching a lot of Frank YouTube stuff. And he says that kind of something like that, that it's like you have to express yourself. And he says things like he never knows what a solo is going to be because he never wants to play the same solo twice. So it's like, I think he said something in one of the interviews, I have a functional knowledge of the instrument. And then he just does whatever happens. And, I mean, maybe you have to be frank to do some of that. But the idea is a really valid one. And if what you come up with is really simple, but it fits and you can play it, touchdown. That's exactly what you should be doing. And as you get more comfortable with that, you find maybe you can play more than just that and build on it that way. But yeah, I think doing original composition, that's the most direct thing from your brain to your hands. So yeah, that's great.
Yeah, just throw your fingers at the string and with no fear of repercussion. It's the safest thing in the world. Just make accidents happen. Some of the best music.
If you're doing that in front of a room full of stick players, that's even better because they're just going to be cheering you on.
Yeah. Okay, so David Broski, D-Bro, you got a question for Mr. Meyer?
Dave.
Hey, Jim, I just want to say I really think you're one of the unsung heroes of our stickdom.
Because I don't sing? Is that what you're saying?
No. No, I honestly, you do such a great job, and we had a lot of, Matt Tate was, we were reminiscing there. Think of the collision of planets. It was you, me, Matt Tate, Dave Tipton, all in this. And you're right, it was that club we were driving around Detroit, ready to get shot, trying to find it on the second floor of that building. And Jim Lampy was so nice. He he and his striped shirt, gave us all individual lessons. And I remember Jim I was going to bring a drum machine because I thought that would be real slick and cool. He goes, "Don't forget that." So I'm like, great. So there goes my whole act. I was right down the tubes, and I had to hurry up and come up with another song to play that night. The same thing happened up at Stickfest when we all took the stage for the big 10.5-hour thing, and I had remember that? Yeah, and I had this whole tune worked up. Greg sees me like 5 minutes before we're ready to break, to go back, and he goes, "Hey, why don't you play that?" He didn't say, here's in brackets, really complex Stevie Wonder tune. I'm like, great, okay, yeah, there goes. But we had so much fun at those seminars, and they were such a good learning experience. And they weren't fancy. They were, we were in Oz's music store, just all in a circle, and just a lot of great learning. And but honestly, your work though up in the Vancouver seminar for it's been almost 14.
Yeah, this was 13 last month.
13 years, yeah. Just amazing. I mean, your tireless efforts, plus you teach. You're a great audio engineer, I know that. We were at Interlochen together for the first one, and they went to we had a lot of fun. We went to the audio seminar, and Jim's standing next to me, and of course you can imagine I'm got my neck cranked to talk to him. So, I know I look bigger in video, but and it was funny. He was like they were like saying things that Jim was giving me the play-by-play. Nah, you never use a sine wave. Nah, you wouldn't turn EQ that way. And you referred to my speakers I have at home as to noise. Do you remember those?
Yes, I remember that well.
That's what I mix with my to noise. But honestly, Jim is such a wonderful, a very colorful player. That last piece you did was just amazing. Did that start as a bass line and then a melody line on top of it, or what is your concept of writing? How do you do that?
Yeah, that's a good thing to talk about too, because I think sometimes you get those moments where something comes, and I'll stand up for a second, but the reason I play that is I wrote that for my mom in about the time it takes to play it. And that's a unique experience for me. That tune just came. And I put the stick on, and it just happened immediately. And boy, if I had a switch to turn that off and on, that would be awesome. I think for me, there's a few different ways to write, but probably the most common as a bass player at heart is to start with a left-hand chord progression or maybe a bass line or something, and then find something that goes with it in the right hand. Is probably the most typical. But it's not always that way. I mean, sometimes I'll hear a melody. Well, the last tune on the first album is called Galliano Wood. Galliano is one of the islands, just one of the Gulf Islands here right off the coast. And Karen and I were walking in the woods, and it's in 7/8 time, and the rhythm just came to me while we were walking. I didn't even have the instrument, which I think is a nod to Greg Howard, because he's pretty big about all the things you can do without actually wearing the instrument. But, you know, it was the rhythm that sort of started that one. And then, you know, that Neuron one, it's like, oh, that left-hand part's pretty fun. What on earth can I actually play at the same time? And that one, that did not come together so quickly at all, because there's still times where if my left hand is doing a certain rhythm, my right hand is a little limited on what it can do. And it was a lot of exploring, like, oh, that sounds awesome, but I can't play it. You know, how about this? How about that? And yeah, I think most of the time it's, well, like everything, it's time. You just gotta like work it through and see where it comes. And even some of the early ones, when Matt and I were talking about writing for the stick, there's a tune on the CD. This is the first tune I ever wrote on the stick. I'm not recording it until this coming up album. You know, that's a power chord. There's nothing to it. But over the years, I found that I could add a little something to that. And the right hand of that whole tune is really a minor pentatonic scale. But it was extremely basic at the beginning, and now it's a little bit more interesting. And that's just from sticking with something that I could actually do and working. Like, can I make something, you know, harmonize it a little different or reach a note I couldn't reach before? So yeah, but I prefer the 5-minute one if I could figure out how to make that happen. I think twice in my life I've written a song in like less than a half an hour.
Did you ever come out of a dream state, Jim, and write? Did you ever do that? Like wake up and...
Well, you know, it's funny. I was in the studio last night a little bit late, kind of, you know, trying to make sure that everything would work. And I had a dream last night that somebody came in here and rearranged everything. So I was wondering if maybe that might lead to a very chaotic piece of music, like, you know, panic, adrenaline, nothing's in the right... But in my dream, somebody had unplugged the speakers, and they were sitting on the floor in the corner stacked up with no cables around them, which, yeah, I guess that speaks to the imagination a little bit. So, yeah, fear maybe I should try fear as a motivation for writing a song.
It's interesting you say that. When we interviewed Per, he said that. He comes up with an emotion and then writes from the emotion. It wasn't like okay, I'll do a D minor 7th, D flat 7th, C minor. He said, you know, I write from emotion. You know, and it was kind of interesting, a concept like that. When you're doing
I have to throw one thing in there that's kind of related to that. I guess, really, I mentioned the Gulf Islands. Most of the music that I write has something to do with me standing in front of a window with a view. And the view of the Gulf Islands, for anybody that's been here, and I know there's other beautiful places in the world like that, but it's like salt water and islands and trees. and the occasional enormous tanker vessel. But I like looking at scenery. And even I'm in an urban setting here where we live. Even that's okay. I prefer the sort of natural thing, but I just need scenery. And for those that have been to Vancouver, many of you must know Florette because we've done a lot of living room concerts in Florette's living room. She was listening to my CD, and she said to me, you know, it makes me think of scenery. And I just had this revelation that I'm not saying anything about me. I think this is about music, that if you feel something when you write a piece of music, and especially for me as an instrumental composer, I don't write lyrics at all. If something moves me to put my hands a certain way, and then 2 years later somebody listens to that and it reminds them of scenery, I just think that's amazing. You know, I'm not taking credit for that. I think that's just what music is. So you're talking about feeling something. Music is the way to convey those non-verbal feelings to someone else, you know, if you get it right. And I just think that's also one of the motivating things that keeps me going. I still play every day. And I have never once been bored with this instrument on. And I've been bored in a lot of other things. I can't even believe that after all these years, every time I put this thing on, it's just fun. It puts me in a good mood. It's like all about exploring, and I can play the songs I know, or I can do something completely different. And I think the stick is, well, I think the stick's unique in that way. Maybe people that play other instruments might argue with me, but I think that's just amazing. Yeah. Sorry, Dave, I interrupted you.
Oh no! It's okay, Jim. We're just watching the clock here. Honestly, Jim, we could probably do 8 hours with you. I think easy.
I think we could, yeah.
No, I just want to ask you a question. When you're doing your busking, do you ever use that as an opportunity to kind of work on some original melodies, or because people are coming by?
I'd be curious to hear from the panel on this because I've done a little research on busking, and my wife Karen, who's more of a writer, has done a fair bit, and she's found a lot of published material that implies that what we would call a circle show, the jugglers and not the non-musicians that busk, that they're performing, but when musicians busk, they're practicing. And I personally disagree with that. I mean, there's a few places that I busk, and you know, one of my goals is to play 3 hours a day in front of people. And a couple of these places, there aren't really that many people. So there is maybe a thought of, maybe I'll try something I've never played before, or maybe I'll try to write a tune on the spot or whatever. But I really fight that because I think if I'm out there playing, I'm plugged into my amp, I'm performing. I'm not practicing. So I will say I've probably busked about 1,000 days now, and I would say probably 2 or 3 times in there I've noodled around with something like, you know, there's nobody around, let's see. But I think as soon as I get into that environment, I'm thinking, no, man, I'm here to play as well as I can, and I should save the noodling for at home. Though that said, as I get a little bit more comfortable, I am finally getting to the point where I can play one of my tunes and not do the right hand the same all the time. And I'm trying to, you know, improvise. I don't call myself an improviser, but I'm trying to at least mix it up a little bit. So I'll do more of that, especially if I'm feeling comfortable. It's like, oh yeah, let's just wing it on the second verse and see where we go. And I guess what I've learned from that is I can still get into a really ugly place, but I'm way better at getting out of it now. And a lot of times I can get back to something that sounds musical instead of, you know, just ending up with a train wreck. Thank you, good night. But yeah, I tend to approach busking as a legitimate professional performance. I mean, I got my table set up, I'm selling CDs, people are generous enough to throw money at me. I'm thinking I shouldn't be practicing. But I'm curious about other people, like, is that just a slag to say that musician buskers are practicing, but anybody else that's busking is a professional performer?
My take on that, Jim, is that you just have a different venue. You are performing. It's to me, every time you're out there, you should be performing. If you're just going to noodle, well, there's 2 things that are going against it. It's performing, but you have an audience who's basically roving, is what it is, as opposed to a stationary audience. But they're still listening, and the ones that want to listen will stop. So I think you owe it to that audience to play. If you're going to play Jim Croce, you play I Got a Name. You play it all the way through, or most of it, that they understand it. because your goal is for them to throw money in that hat or buy a CD. You know, if you're just out here going, oh look, I'm just showing off my big egotistical mania here, then you could play anything. You could go and do flat fives all day, da 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 da, and you'll go home and put your hat on and it won't hurt because nothing will fall out of it. So I think you're right. I think you're absolutely right, and I think you have the right approach because you are on stage. I think every time you put a stick on, you have eyes on you. Whether you probably have ears on you too, but you definitely have that.
Actually, from busking in a few places pretty regularly, I eventually came to realize everyone hears me. And all these people know who I am without me realizing it, because even if you can't see them, the sound is carrying. And the other thing about the instrument, this is such a conversation starter. A lot of people will just they'll walk right up to me and say, yeah, what is that, And I'm like, I'm kind of playing right now, but maybe we can talk in a minute, But it's like, I know that anybody, even if they don't care at all about what I'm playing, they're going to look at this stick and go, what is that? So I know that all eyes are on me, like you said, even if only for a second. And and I like it every now and then, there might be a little partying going on at one of these outdoor venues and some cloud of smoke will waft by, and then a couple of guys will come up to me and go, hey, you guys are great. I think, well, I guess they think they're hearing two people, but that's a good thing. Yeah.
I got to tell you, the thing that I love about busking the most is that it's the most immediate form of feedback, where if you can stop someone in their tracks and then they stay and wait until the piece is finished and actually then throw you money, I mean, you know that you're doing something right. But I mean, like, when during the Fringe Festival here, I actually do a lot of busking, and I love it. But if there's no one around, I'm guilty of working pieces that aren't entirely, at the stage they should be at. But I mean, it's also the fact that people can hear you that make you want to take that, or at least make me want to take that chance, and work through those parts that need work as you're playing it live.
I think that's fair enough, and I don't mean to overstate it. I mean, I don't have to have a tune 100% polished before I'm going to attempt it in front of people. But I do. I'm not going to just like, oh, what happens if I do this? It's something that I have worked on, and yeah, maybe it needs a little more work, and I'll still play it. But I'm not just going to wing it with nothing. Oh, and since we're talking about busking, the other thing about the instrument, people come up to me all the time that have some connection with Emmett. And it's been really interesting to have these conversations with a fellow that recorded Emmett in like 1976, and we were talking for a minute, and he wrote on the back of his business card the name of the studio and when it was, and the next time I was in Southern California, I was having dinner with Emmett in Utah and Kevin Keith and whoever else is all down there. And I mentioned it to Emmett. He goes, oh, I remember that session. And he told me about the guy. And, oh, yeah, he did a really good job. And I met a woman who she and her husband were the Japanese distributors for the stick in the 80s. Right. And he gave me her card, and Emmett knew him. Like, oh, really nice couple and that. And then one guy came up to me and said, yeah, I know the guy that built that. And I said, oh, yeah, Emmett. And he goes, yeah, I remember when he was living in a basement in Winnipeg. And like, okay. So I remember talking to Emmett. Hey, Emmett, remember when you lived in Winnipeg? Yeah, Emmett never lived in Winnipeg, so I still don't know who he's talking about, but we had a nice conversation anyhow. Back when Emmett was making sticks in a basement.
Gene Perry has a question.
Gene.
All right.
Jim? Gene Perry has a question for you.
All right. So for starters, Jim, what a fantastic session. I'm digging this, and Dale and Russell and everyone. This is super fun, and I'm so glad that we finally get a chance to hear about Vancouver. And maybe there's some stories we'll never hear about Vancouver. Some stuff that will stay up in Vancouver. Maybe that stuff is going to stay up there. I'm sure Dale will, give us the lowdown at some point. I suppose the kind of what I'm inspired most by is just that you've just managed to build the community so organically and do it in such a natural way where people feel comfortable and people feel safe and people support each other, and they're posting links of each other and not always of themselves, and I think that's kind of a testament to what you're doing, which is, pulling the community up with you, and so I appreciate that, and I always look forward to the pictures and all the things that you've got going on up there, and someday I'm hoping this year to maybe make it out to Interlaken. As far as Interlaken, we'll see. But I suppose my question for you is, well, for starters, my first question is, how many frets can you reach with that left hand of yours? Because that stick in your hands looks like an alto. So, like, if you stretch out your left hand, yeah.
I think.
Look at all those happy people.
That's the Sticks seminar from this year, by the way. So you
can
see Gail in there, and Tom, and Nathan, and yeah, we had a great group. And the reason I throw that up there is in the early days of the Vancouver seminar, my goal was to get people to come to Vancouver, and it still is. Everyone should come to Vancouver. But how do you end screen share there, Gene?
Just click on it again.
Okay.
That little icon up on the left side there. If you click on that.
Okay. But now exactly what you said. I want to have this local group, and I'm looking at the photo from this year's seminar, and there's, it's more than half are. I'm going to say BC, but I include, Scott comes up from Seattle. I mean, Scott from Portland and Lewis from Seattle, so they're kind of my Pacific Northwest buds. But there was a lot less airfare at this year's seminar than like 10 years ago, where everyone came from out of town. And I really do like that there is this core local group now that can, kind of keep things going, at least I hope.
Right. Yeah, it's good. It's a good thing. So if you want to end the screen share in there, just click on that green button again.
Yeah, I just did. It just puts it up.
Yeah, I think you clicked the wrong green button.
Oh, right. Got you. There we go.
Okay. Yeah. So, and then the other thing, trying to do something with the Freehands Academy, and seeing what you're doing, it's definitely an inspiration to see how well organized it is. I know that Greg was like, "Gosh, can we?" In the nicest way possible, he's like saying, "If only Jim could be down here." Like he knows how to do this. And I know that he didn't mean it mostly in a mean way, but it was kind of like, he's made all the mistakes. He's been doing it for 13 years. He knows what it looks like, and so that's kind of cool.
And that's exactly it. And I think for me, I'm not the quickest study. So it took me a while to be able to play the stick, and it took me a while to figure out how to do a stick seminar. But always I had help along the way. And, I should mention Glenn Poorman a bit more, because not only am I a huge fan of his music, but I had a plane ticket to go to the 2001 Michigan seminar because Glenn was in Kamloops. I think, Jim's seminar, Jim Riley's seminar was in August of 2001. And Glenn convinced me to come to Michigan, so I got a plane ticket. Actually, I think I had points, so I had a plane ticket, and then some horrible stuff happened on 9/11, and I think I was supposed to fly on September 13th, and it just didn't happen, but I did make it to Michigan the next year. But Glenn and I would talk like, how are you organizing it this year, or what can you do, and oh, hey, let's make a website, and we were kind of pushing, and when Tom was doing his in San Diego too, we just kind of push each other a little bit, and it was this really friendly rivalry of, oh, so you're going to block off the street and do a performance, outside. How can I beat that, And then, all right, we're going to busk on Granville Island or something. And we were always trying to find a new way to make the seminars work. So, yeah, everybody that I went to their seminar, we always compare notes. And, yeah, it's always a long time for me, and it's always with help from others, but I do eventually get there. So, yeah. And my suggestion for the next Freehands Academy would be to move it to Vancouver.
I'll see if I can get Emmett to come up there. It's like a 12-minute drive for him, which is why it's so appealing. And I knew that it was like the only shot I have at getting Emmett there in between, like, setting up rail boards and whatever, making sticks, is to have it down the street. It just so happens that Larry Tuttle's down the street, and Don Schiff is down the street, and Kevin Keith is down the street.
One card that I have that I've tried to play a couple of times, but it hasn't quite worked, is a little-known Chapman stick trivia. Emmett and Utah were married in Vancouver, in a little stone church about 2 miles from here. And I'm like, well, Emmett, maybe we could tie it in with your anniversary or something like that. But But I know, he's so busy, and I don't think he minds traveling. It's being away from the shop, and for him to come and do your thing, he's away for an evening. But to come up here, he's got to be away for days or a couple of days at least. And I know that's the issue. Is there's so much to do at Stick Enterprises.
Well, I think I have an agreement with Glenn that we wouldn't be doing the Free Hands Academy next year because we want people to go to Interlaken. So if we do Free Hands Academy next year, it'll be in a much smaller scale. It'll probably just be like it might just be Bob, and Tom maybe, just to kind of do what Tom's doing and try to get out of the way of other people that like Tom. Like I want him to do it, but he's so busy. It's just hard to kind of lock him in. Hey, I wanted to share something.
To me, Interlaken is a little bit different, but it kind of makes me think about the retreats that we do here. So for those that don't know, there's been 13 seminars that are Vancouver seminars, but we've been to Salt Spring Island once, and we've been to Gabriola Island, I think, 4 times now. So we don't always stay in an urban setting, and those retreats, when we go to the island, it's, I think, a little bit like the Free Hands Academy that, man, from the time you get there until the time you leave, it's just stick immersion. And no, I really love the Vancouver seminars, but the retreats on the island are a real special thing. And Interlaken, to me, is like that. You're not close to anything except a bunch of musicians. So you tend to like have all your meals together and hang out in the evening together, and I think that's ultimate. That's the best.
And that's the idea.
Okay, so
and that's what I'm trying to capture is what we were doing at the National Guitar Summer Workshop with Frank Joel, and that is that we're in dorms together, right? I mean, like we are like literally living together. We have all our meals together. Like by the end of the seminar, it's like we're sick of each other, but we love each other. But we like go away, like go. I'm getting on a plane away from you, like because you wake up, you have breakfast, you learn, you have lunch together, and anyways, that was a lot like the National Guitar Summer Workshop with Frank Joliffe and Alfonso Johnson that I went to back out in the early '90s. So they did that 3 years. I went each year, and then they stopped doing it. And so that's why it's like having the Vancouver seminar. It's like everyone knows where it is. They know when it's happening. Knows going to be there, and so it's kind of it's an important part of this, kind of the stickosphere, So,
well,
anyways,
I don't think we ever got sick of each other. And in fact, Matt, you were on Salt Spring, weren't you, Matt? Because that was the first retreat was on Salt Spring Island, and we were all staying in one building that was all hexagons. It was a straw bale Soviet building with everybody staying together. Breakfast only happened if the chickens laid 13 eggs, so we could all eat, and that happened every day we were there. And it, I think those retreats are awesome. I don't think anybody got tired of being there.
The only complaint I had is that they didn't have coffee. It was tea only.
Oh, what the heck? Hey, listen.
You weren't happy with the quinoa juice?
That was fine. That was good. It's no coffee.
I have to bounce, you guys, but I just wanted to thank. I wanted to thank you, Jim, and Dale, and you two, Debra, and Matt, the Statue of Liberty. Chicago's in the house, and of course Russell.
My last
You
interruption.
guys know, but like Russell's running the show now, so tip of hat to you all, and certainly to you, Jim, for making the time. And it's really fun to hear all the experiences that you guys have had together, with Matt and Dave and Dale. It's also exciting to hear. There's so much. There's like this rich history that's going on with the Vancouver seminar, and I'm glad to see it's continuing to prosper.
Yeah, we have new people every year. We had, I think, 4 new faces this year, so it's always fun. But I also wanted to nod to you. I know I've told you this in person, but the Free Hands Fridays are awesome. And I was, again, a late bloomer on that, but I really did watch. I've seen all of them, and I've learned from every one of them. It's a lot like a seminar, You never know when somebody's going to say something or do something that you've just never thought of before.
Yeah.
And it's really cool to get these little things to kind of work on or to add to what you're doing.
Yeah, Kevin Cason blew my mind last week, or like 2 weeks ago. He's like, slow down and learn. I was like, what? Oh, yeah. That makes perfect sense. So I'm getting kind of the sign here that it's time for us to wrap it up.
Okay.
all right.
I think everybody.
All right. So,
Okay.
I think Russell is the only one that hadn't asked you a question. Russell, if we've reached our plaid saturation point, I'm just wondering, do you have a quick one for Jim, or do you just want to make any announcements on who's coming up?
Why don't we just go ahead and wrap it up? The time is really flowing, and I didn't realize because it's been so interesting, but we did run quite a bit longer. So thank you very much, Jim. Thank you, Dale. Thank you, everyone, for participating. And anybody watching now or in the future, blah, 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 add in. Anyway, some quick announcements. Next week, July 4th, we're not having a Free Hands Friday. So happy 4th of July, whether you celebrate it or not, it's still the 4th. You could celebrate it. On July 11th, we have Jim Riley. The week after that, July 18th, is Nathan Aswell, and he's an NS stick player. And then July 25th is Rick Beyer. And that's all I have as far as announcements on the up-and-coming schedule, but I'm sure that Gene has more in his back pocket.
July 11th is my birthday.
Woohoo!
Well,
the big 4-0.
July 1st is Canada's birthday.
All right, there's Greg Howard on August 3rd. And there's a secret host. Am I reading that right? Yeah, okay.
Sacred.
Yeah, all right. So, thanks everyone. Happy Free Hands Friday, and we'll see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
Bye.